Welcome to the Creator Resource Virtual Panels, where as often as possible, we'll be hosting discussions that cover topics that are helpful to you all as you navigate the comic book industry and freelancing in general. In this panel, we're going to be discussing the daunting world of finances, learn about budgets, debt, and what the heck TFSAs and RRSPs are, as well as hear some common investment strategies to make the most of your money. So today we are joined by Michelle Parker. Michelle, thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I guess I'll just kind of launch in here. So I just want to start off by saying that I'm not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. What I'm really hoping here is I'm going to cover some basic terminology, and I'm trying to encourage you to consider setting up an investment fund for your savings. So most of this talk is going to be generally applicable no matter where you live, but some of the specifics, generally TFSAs and RRSPs are Canadian only, so those won't apply to other countries.
And who are you, Michelle, before we dive into things?
So I'm Michelle Parker. I am a comic writer with Jay Pollock. We do Topaz Comics together, and a general finance and money enthusiast.
Excellent. And again, we are very happy to have you. And thank you so much for putting this together for us. I think we were mentioning this beforehand, but I know nothing of finances. So please teach me, teach everyone who's tuning in, and tell us what you know.
Well, I love to share this, so I'm going to just get started. So first off, let's talk about budgets. I know that's everyone's favorite. But budgeting at its core is just making sure that you're spending less than you're making. So it's really not as complicated as it can kind of feel like. So a budget can be anything, but maybe the most helpful when it gives you a clear picture of what you're spending and compared to what else you may want to be spending or doing with your money. So a budget doesn't have to be forcing yourself to go to extreme measures to save money. I think for a lot of people, when they picture budget, they picture beans and rice for every meal and no discretionary spending. I don't think that's the most efficient or sustainable way to do a budget. So there's tons of different suggestions on different budgets you can try and advice about budgeting. Whatever one that you use or are going to use is going to be the best one for you. So even if you don't feel like you're the kind of person who needs a budget, I think their real value is getting yourself used to tracking what you're buying so that there's no surprises when you look at your statements at the end of the month, and also getting yourself comfortable thinking and talking about money. I know a lot of people find that really uncomfortable. So if you have a place where you sit down every week, every month, every year, and track what you've been spending on during that period, is going to make you more comfortable handling those big discussions in the future. So inevitably, kind of hand in hand with budgeting would be debt. So debt is when you borrow money to purchase something that you can't afford outright. Most people, most Canadians will have debt at some point in their life. It's not something to be ashamed about. It really is something that touches almost everyone. Debt's generally considered to be in two categories, and unfortunately it has kind of a moralistic tone, but we'll go with what we have. So there's good debt and bad debt. So good debt is spending money on something that will go up in value. So generally something like buying a house or getting a degree, where you know that the education you're getting will give you a higher salary in the future. Bad debt is buying something that decreases in value. Generally, that's everything else. So the issue with debt is that when you borrow money, the person lending it to you person or company lending it to you charges interest. So interest is a certain percentage that you have to pay on top of the cost of repaying the money that you already owe. So the amount that the interest is can vary depending on what kind of loan you take out, but in many cases it can be really, really expensive. So generally the most expensive kinds are credit card interest and then payday loans, which are in particular are really, really high. So for people who are looking to get started in savings, it may be worthwhile to consider focusing on paying down your debt before you look into really building up your savings, because the interest that you're going to be charged on your debt is almost guaranteed to be higher than the amount of money you're going to be earning through whatever investment strategy you take on. So if you're feeling like you're overwhelmed by debt or not sure how you can handle it, or you find that you have a lot of different payments to a lot of different lenders, there's a lot of different not-for-profit centers that can help you figure out how to deal with that and can consolidate it into an easier payment system for you. So was there anything there that you felt like you wanted me to clarify or go into a little bit more?
I think that's great. Like debt is something that, like, for me, like, I was personally really ashamed of for a long time because, you have student loans and credit cards and you just like don't really know what to do with it. But like, as you get older, you realize, like you said, like everyone really has debt, and it's something that's really crappy that unites us, but like, it's not something to be ashamed about. It's just kind of knowing when you're at your capacity and needing to find help to kind of manage that better. So
yeah, there's a lot of moralizing around your finances, and I think in particular we are in a culture where having money is implied to make you a good person and not having money is implied to make you a bad person, and that's absurd. And I hope that hearing this helps people who are in that situation feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more like, oh, wait, this isn't a moral or personal failing. This is just an economic system we live in.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, let's be honest, comics, and they don't make a ton of money. Creators don't make a ton of money. So what money you do get, you want to figure out early on how to manage that and how to best kind of make the most of things as best as you can within your limitations.
Yes, if you are a freelancer and have an income that can be really high at certain points and be really low at certain other points, having a budget is a really helpful method for that, so that in times of plenty, you have some capacity to start saving for those times where business is a bit slower.
And making sure that you're setting aside money for things like taxes too. Yeah. But that's all for me. I just had things to say. I have no questions so far.
All right. So I'm going to move specifically into my section on TFSAs and RRSPs. So to start with, the government actually wants you to save money. And they've created specific ways for you to do so, and are encouraging you to do that way by giving you a tax break.
And that's specific again to the Canadian government.
Yes, absolutely. So presumably your government, if you're not Canadian, also has some options available for you. As I am a Canadian citizen, I'm afraid I can't talk about anything else though. So I'm going to be covering specifically TFSAs and RRSPs in this talk, but even in Canada, there are other options out there for saving your money. However, these two are the most common ones, and they, I believe, have the only qualification of you need to be a Canadian citizen, and then you can get these benefits. So to start with, TFSA stands for a tax-free savings account. This account, unlike an RRSP, is not focused on your retirement, so you have more flexibility on when you can withdraw money from it. So every year you'll be able to invest a certain amount of money into your TFSA, and the amount can be found online or at your Canadian Revenue Agency account, your CRA account, and that will tell you how much you can invest after you file your taxes. So the amount in your TFSA that you can invest stacks year after year. So if you don't invest for 1 year, that amount is still there, and then you can invest that amount on top of from the previous year and this year altogether. The other nice thing about a TFSA is that when you withdraw money, you can also put that money back into your account the following year. So if you withdraw $1,000 from your TFSA in, say, 2019, and then in 2020, you'll be able to put that $1,000 back in along with the approximately $6,000 that you would have been able to put in anyways. So the tax savings you get through your TFSA is that when your account makes money through interest or market gains, which is stuff we'll talk about later, the money that you earn from that will not be taxed. So for example, if you make $5,000, the government taxes you on that amount, and say you're left with $4,500. So if you invest that money into your TFSA and it makes $1,000 a month, you're not taxed on the $1,000 that it's made. Because of this, your tax-free savings account is a really great place to invest in stocks and bonds through an investment portfolio. Okay, and now on to RRSPs. So RRSP stands for a Registered Retirement Savings Plan. So this account is focused specifically on letting you save for your retirement. And if you withdraw from it before then, you'll face specific penalties. There are some exceptions on those for buying a house or continuing your education. So like a TFSA, every year you'll be able to invest a certain amount of money into it. And your CRA account will let you know how much you can invest after you file your taxes, because it is based on how much you make per year. So the benefits of an RRSP, which are different from a TFSA, is that the money you invest will reduce your taxable income amount for that year. So for example, if you earn $70,000 in a year and then invest $20,000 of it into your RRSP, you'll only be taxed as if you earned $50,000. So if you invest the money in your RRSP, the money you earn from those investments will not be taxed the year you earn it. Instead, you're taxed on the money when you withdraw it from your RRSP. So it's assumed that when you take money out of your RRSP, it's going to be when you're retired. And it's also assumed that because you're retired, you're going to be earning less, and that will put you in a lower tax bracket than when you were working. So investing in your retirement while you're young gives you a lot of chances for your money to build through your investments. So it's something to not be afraid of starting early, even if it's just a small amount. When you're looking at 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that's really a lot of room for even a small amount of money to really grow. So what's the main difference between a TFSA and an RRSP? So whether you invest in one or the other really depends on what your mid and long-term saving goals are. So for a TFSA, you have a lot of flexibility and the ability to take money in and out over a shorter period of time. But with the RRSP, you get the tax break, and also it's harder to take money out if you find that it's difficult for you to save. So that might be appealing in its own right. The thing to consider is that the tax savings of an RRSP become negligible if your income is under a certain amount. So if you're a low income earner, you might find it more worthwhile to just invest in your TFSA. So there's lots of free resources available for helping you. You can talk to your bank, there's stuff online, there's lots of books, and your library probably has some free lectures as well. And don't let information paralysis take you over. Even a small savings is a good starting point, and both a TFSA and an RRSP are free to open through your bank.
That's really good to know. I actually was looking into a lot of this stuff last year and had exactly that, information overload. I just didn't know really where to go with any of it. And it's just I guess I'm not doing this. So you make it sound very easy and very, straightforward. And it's oh, maybe I can do this. So
yeah, well, when you start breaking it down okay, so out of the two options, do I want one or the other? And then once I have that, how am I going to invest? And I'm going to be talking specifically about the most common types of investment portfolios. And really, a lot of them are really easy and really simple to get started with. None of you have to become your own stockbroker, I promise.
So in regards to the RRSPs, you mentioned that there was it was always a good time. It's a good time to start kind of whenever, if you're young, whenever you kind of feel like you can. What is is there an amount that's too low, you think, to kind of start? Like if you can put in set aside $50 a month, and then at the end of the year, whatever you kind of accumulate, you deposit, is that worthwhile still?
If you can invest $50 a month every month for a year, then you're doing fantastic. It really doesn't have to be huge. And the nice thing about investment portfolios is once you start investing, you'll start seeing those gains. And then as those gains build, the money will get reinvested into what you've already purchased. So it just keeps growing and growing and growing.
So even if you can't afford $50 a month, kind of just whatever you can put aside to kind of save will ultimately help you in the long run. Mm-hmm. Even I know that's not feasible for everybody. I know even that's daunting. That was something out of my reach for a very long time. So I don't want anybody to feel, if $50 isn't an amount for you, but anything you can helps.
Yes. So I'm going to talk specifically at the end on how you can get started in investing. But generally speaking, if you have $100, that is enough to get you started.
Awesome.
Okay. So I keep talking about investment portfolios. So let's explain what they are and why you should use them.
And I'm going to ask one more clarification.
Yes,
so this is back to general knowledge, not just necessarily specific to Canada.
Yes. Everyone can buy a bond. Everyone can buy a stock. Everyone can buy a mutual fund.
Okay. So just the middle. We're just a Canada sandwich there.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So every year the cost of living increases. This is inflation. So what that means for your savings is that $100 today will be worth more than $100 is 5 years from now. If you are saving money, particularly if it's a significant amount, and you're not investing it, that money is actually losing value because of inflation. So your bank will have some savings accounts that you can earn a guaranteed amount of interest, and this is likely around 1%. But if that amount is lower than the rate of inflation is during that time period, then you've only reduced the amount of value loss. So investment portfolios do not have a guarantee on how much money you will earn, but generally speaking, you will earn more money over a period of time above the rate of inflation. So by the end of this, I'm hoping that you'll feel confident creating or taking your savings, investing them in a TFSA or RRSP or other investment thing in your own country, and putting that money towards an investment portfolio. So since this is an intro, I'm only going to be covering the most common and not simple, but most used options. There are tons of them out there, but my assumption is if you're coming to an intro to finance talk, it might not be the stuff you're interested in. So I'm going to cover bonds and stocks. And first, I'm going to start with bonds. So generally speaking, the main way people invest their money is through stocks and bonds and real estate, but I'm not going to be talking about that here. So bonds are a loan from a government or company, and they pay out interest and, after a certain point, repay the money that you initially invested as well. So bonds are often attractive because they offer a firmer guarantee that you won't lose money in a fluctuating market, but there are still risks involved. So depending on the current interest rates, how much you're being paid may change. And if the company goes bankrupt, you may not be repaid on the loan itself. So bonds tend to be seen as a safer investment, but they also do offer a lower return on your investment. So depending on what the interest rates are, you may not even be matching inflation. So most investment portfolios will have some money put into bonds, often very secure ones, such as government or utility companies, So you always have some guarantee that even if there's a market crash, it's unlikely that you're going to lose all of your money. So let's get into the really complicated one, stocks. So buying stocks is buying a share of the company. When the company does well, the value goes up and your share is worth more. If the company does poorly, the value goes down and your share is worth less. When you purchase a company's stock, you own a share and then you become a shareholder. So stocks are a very popular investment strategy for several reasons. And the first is that historically, over long periods of time, the stock market will continually increase in value. Even after large dips in performance, over the long term, stocks generally make more money than any other investment strategy. So when you're ready to use the money you have invested in your stocks, you sell your shares. Any increase in value becomes profit for you. Or if it decreases in value, that means you're selling at a loss. You are making less money than you spent to buy it. With stocks, companies also pay out dividends to their shareholders. That's when a portion of the company's profits are split up among its shareholders. And the amount you receive depends on how many shares you own. So for example, if you invest in a stock and they make $1 million in profit, and decide to split that up among their shareholders as dividends, if you own 1% of the share or one stock, your amount is going to be way less than someone who owns 50% of that stock. So the stock market value of a share can change based on various factors, including speculation, which is when there's a guess on whether a company or sector increasing in value. So because of speculation and a lot of other uncertain factors, the stock market can change really rapidly. I think we've seen that a lot over the last year.
Yeah.
So for most people who are investing in stocks, you want to invest in strong stocks, so stocks that have had a history of increased performance, and then you want to hold on to them for a long period of time, perhaps even several decades. So that way you're guaranteed to have that general increase over time, even if during that, say, 20-year period, you see big dips and drops and spikes. The thing to consider with stocks is if you're too invested and then spend a lot of time watching and selling every time the market dips, you can actually lose money in the long term versus if you had just held on to it. So I'm not here to tell you that you should start personally investing in the stock market. I find that very intimidating. What you can do instead is create an investment portfolio. So having money to invest is only part of creating an investment portfolio. It's a good idea to diversify your investments so that if one area loses value, your entire portfolio doesn't drop with it. To have a really diverse set of investments requires many thousands of dollars, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Instead, there are options where you can invest a smaller amount of money while still having the security of diverse investments. So what most people do is they invest in mutual funds through their bank or financial advisor. But there's also online options such as Wealthsimple or Robinhood, which is currently US only. So when you invest money into a mutual fund, the people managing the fund managers, make decisions on what investments the mutual funds will put its money towards. The overall performance of the various types of investments are then returned back to you, the person investing in the mutual fund. So you can either take the money out, or you can invest it back into the mutual fund so that your earnings continue to increase over time. This is called compound investing. There are various types of mutual funds that offer different balances of risk, so your chance of losing money, and income, which is how much money the fund is likely to make. So if you want a low risk fund, you'll often find mutual funds with a lot of bonds. Whereas if you're comfortable with a higher risk fund, you'll find that they're invested more in stocks. So mutual funds are a business and have various types of fees and commissions depending on what kind of option you choose. So when you're looking to invest in a mutual fund, be sure to consider the fees as part of the investment performance that they're advertising. So for example, if you see a portfolio that has an 8% return on investment, so if you make, you make 8%, you're likely to make 8% on the amount you contributed. For example, you make $8 on an investment of $100, and then the mutual fund's fees are 3%, you're only going to be making 5% of that 8% return. So these fees are going to apply even if your investment loses money. So if you find that your portfolio is down 2% in a year, then you're going to have to pay an additional 3% on top of that. So there are different types of plans, including exchange traded funds, also called ETFs, which are not actively managed, and these typically have a lower fee percentage. So there's going to be a real plethora of options based on your risk tolerance and with different amounts of fees and commissions. So this can sound scary and overwhelming, but I think a push might be that the time not spent investing your money, that money is decreasing in value every year. So spending some time deciding on what investment portfolio you want will mean financial security in the long run. And if you're not sure, your bank will be very happy to help you get started. So let's get into a little bit more nitty-gritty on how to invest. So assuming that I've convinced you that, oh shoot, I should really invest the money that I've been having savings sitting in my checking account, I want to go into a bit more detail on what to consider when you do decide to invest. So the first is what we talked about earlier, and it's that you don't need a large savings in order to be able to invest in a mutual fund. So each fund is going to have different amount requirements, but there are many with low or no minimum investments. You should expect to invest at least $100 to start. And obviously, in a lot of cases, the more you have on hand to invest, the better. But depending on what your savings goals are, even a small amount can be a great place to start. And the second is you should know your saving goals and then plan accordingly from there. So most mutual funds will expect you to invest in them for a certain number of years, and it's going to have penalties if you withdraw your money before that time period is up. So investing in a mutual fund is not a good strategy for short-term goals, specifically less than a year, but perhaps even less than 5 years. If you're looking for a midterm financial goal, such as down payment for a house or condo in, say, 5 or 10 years, you may want to invest in a lower risk account where you can, knowing that even if you make less returns, you're also less likely to risk a market crash just when you wanted to take out your investment and spend it. So if you're looking to save for retirement and are, say, around our age and know that you have several decades worth of work ahead of you, you might be more comfortable investing in a higher risk portfolio with market up and downs, knowing that by the time you're ready to retire in your 60s or 70s, that you're going to have a higher return overall. And lastly, if your work does not have a pension plan or you're self-employed, your savings are going to be a retirement fund. So if you start saving now, even if it's a small amount, you're going to be giving yourself more freedom and flexibility as you grow older. And then the last thing to consider is that people in lower tax brackets, a TFSA may offer more advantages than an RRSP, as the tax reduction is going to be more limited the less you earn.
That's all super helpful. It definitely convinced me that I need to start doing stuff. Now I'm panicked. I'm like, oh my God, oh God, I have to look into all of these things right away. I have to stop just saving money. I need to actually do something more with it. So
I guarantee that if you go look up your bank name, mutual funds, they will have a page, and in that page they'll have maybe 10, 15, 20 different options on mutual funds you can invest in right now.
Somebody like told me, a friend of mine who had tried to get me to like learn more about investing last year had told me that like savings accounts, when you just put your money into a savings account, like your bank is basically giving your money out to other people. Like it's like loaning your money elsewhere. And I was like, what? Like it's all just bananas to me. So,
So when you put your money into a savings account, the ones with like 1% interest and stuff, the bank will be lending that out. And that's why they'll have penalties on if you take it back before that certain period is up. But the benefit is if you're looking for a short-term saving goal of like, I know that in 6 months, I want to publish my book, and to do so, I need $3,000. That 1% is a very good way to start building up that savings for you.
That's really great. Thank you so much for putting all of this together.
Oh, not a problem. I really enjoy getting to talk about financial investment options.
It's so important. And I think, like, again, like I see threads frequently on Twitter and elsewhere where people just kind of generally talk about make sure you set aside that 30% for your taxes. But I really don't see people talking more in depth beyond that in terms of like what to really do with your money. And again, for some people, that's a struggle. Like, again, no shame in that. Like, we all are doing what we can to, make money, survive, thrive, and all that. But yeah, like, I think it's really important to have these discussions, and it's just like blowing my mind too. It's just like all these things I really have to get on top of. And,
Yeah, because that kind of stuff is often something that people aren't taught. And it's a really intimidating thing to be like, okay, today I am going to learn about the stock market.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear that you don't need to become an expert to invest in the stock market. You can, in fact, pay someone to do that for you, and not an outrageous amount. You can be like, I want to invest in companies that have historically done well and are most likely to continue to do well, and then see my money grow with them.
That's great. Yeah. No, seriously, this has been so enormously helpful because I am like a complete newbie when it comes to trying to figure all of this out. So I, again, deeply appreciate all of this. And again, I want to clarify on behalf of Creator Resource and Michelle that this is just advice from somebody who is passionate about finances.
Yes.
So Michelle is not a financial advisor and is not a pro, so to speak, in terms of, taking advice. I don't think there's anything in here that could get you in trouble, hot water sort of thing. These are smart savings moves, smart investing moves and stuff. But
none of this is meant to say this is the thing you should invest in. It's just, here are the options available. Here are the most common ones, and here are the most accessible ones. I want to have people feel more confident when they go into a bank and the bank or the person talking to them about their mutual fund says, do you want a high or low risk portfolio? They go, oh, that means more bonds or more stocks.
Gotcha. That's great. And where can people find you if they want to like ask any like questions or follow up, or maybe just to like follow and say hello for your wonderful comics?
I think the best place to follow would be at Topaz Comics on Twitter or topazcomics.com, our website. Don't try and find my profile. I don't post anything.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And if you like this panel and want to check out more of our upcoming sessions, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you want more content from Creator Resource, you can visit our website, creatorresource.com, or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We are all Creator Resource across the board. Additionally, and maybe most importantly, we need your support to keep being able to do this project. Creator Resource is a passion project done on the spare time and in the energy of its contributors. To support our site and expanding efforts like these virtual panels, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/creator resource. Like I said, it's the exact same username across the board. So we'll be working on some new tiers. You can stay tuned for that. Jay Pollock, who is Michelle's partner, did our wonderful graphic, which you will see in the things. And thank you to Bobby Shortle as well, who is our video producer, who is silently and hidden here, but has been lurking in the background, making sure that this looks good and sounds good. And we deeply, deeply appreciate his efforts.
I'm always watching.
Always watching, always waiting. So thank you. Thank you for watching, and be sure to leave us a comment if there's something that we haven't covered yet that you would love to see us tackle next time.